Okay, I am going to start building this. So this is going to be pantry cabinets. So this is going to be one big, huge upper and lower. And this is going to be two huge cabinets that are going to go side by side and connect one another. And then a lower guy right there. So we're going to go ahead and start this. I need a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 sheets of 3/4 pre-finished maple plywood for this job. So I start with a little strong, a 23. So I'll be like at 23 1/4 roughly for the first, and then I'll rip off the edges. These are going to need to have holes drilled in them. Dados put in for all the joinery, typical stuff. This is kind of what happens when you work with this material. This is the high dollar material, of course, the pre-finished maple. It's really nice, but as you can see right here, see that that gap that you have there in the middle? That's because of a bow. Yeah. Now, this material has a bow, but the thing is I'm using this for the shelves, and I'm actually going to put the bow up so that actually over time, with the shelf and all the stuff being on it, it'll actually flatten out the shelf. So I'm using that to my advantage to actually strengthen the shelf. So at any piece that had a bow, I did that with. It's just, I think there's one in here that, I think this one had a bow in it that I couldn't get around, but I'll try to cut that up into smaller pieces. We got the pieces cut, and now these are actually the lengths of the 93s. So those are 71s, so those are going to be pretty big. 35s and various other sizes. Go ahead and start the joinery. So all these pieces have to be put together with dados and rabbets. All right. Well, it's 5 o'clock. It's time to shut her down for the night. I've got a whole bunch of holes to drill, and this particular jig gives me the layout of the hole spacing, and the entire thing basically is right here. I know exactly how far up the holes will go. If I start right here, my holes are going to end there, so I put a mark there, and then I continue up. So I'm going to go actually right pretty close to the top on these. I've got it so it's basically the same on the bottom and the top. And this is not something that I rush into. I really try to take my time because I really don't want to mess up. And I'm telling you, this is something that can easily be messed up if you're not focused. And even if you are focused, just check it again, make sure that it's right. And hopefully it is, especially when you have dividers, vertical dividers. Let me show you. So these all have dividers in them, right? The vertical divider right there, and the lower cabinets have those dividers. Well, when you have dividers that are in dados, that means they're sitting down further than the top of this dado, which means I'm measuring from the top of the dado up 5.5 inches on center. This one, because it goes down 1/4 inch, I actually have to measure from the bottom of that piece up 5 3/4 to accommodate for that 1/4 inch deep dado. But it's like a storyboard essentially. So it's also a spacer for when I use 3/4 inch backs. When I use the jig, I have to use a spacer in order to accommodate for the rabbet on the back side. I want the holes to be the same on both sides. So I have to use that spacer to account for that rabbet right there. when you need to do a lot of holes. And normally I use ultralight MDF, but in this case I'm using pre-finished maple plywood. This stuff is really, really tough on the drill bits in a machine, in a drill. You get tear out a lot of times. So if you're gonna get really clean, if you want really clean holes, you really need to use a machine like this. The way that the bits go in perfectly straight and they don't wobble at all, because your hand, as it moves in, it kind of moves a little bit. So you're gonna get a little bit of tear out because of that. But because these go in perfectly straight and plumb, they have really nice carbide brad point bits. And these are 5mm, in case you were wondering, not 1/4 inch. And it's awesome. So you just you drill down one time, and then these spring mechanisms, you see that, will go down and lock itself into the hole so you can continue on down. That block is going to keep this piece from dropping, so I can bring it all the way down, even the 8-foot long ones. This is kind of a messy job, so dust collection is really important. The problem is with dust collection, you're not really going to get any. I have my hose hooked up, so as I drill these and finish them up, I can clean up the top. Is just not attainable with a drill. You can't get holes that clean. I've not been able to ever. I mean, certainly maybe 1 or 2, but not the whole thing. So every one of the holes is perfectly clean and perfectly spaced. So that's cool. Before I assemble and fully glue them up, I'm going to measure for the backs. So I'll do a mock assembly, measure for the backs, and then cut the backs so that I don't have to worry about cutting them. And then after I glue these up, I can glue the back on right away. This cabinet, because it's so wide, right? It's almost 70 inches wide. I'm having to do this in 2 pieces. So this is going to be one piece, and this is going to be another piece split with that divider there. I'm going to these labels marked bottom and top. So I want to make sure that I put it, of course, bottom side down. So you can see that joint's nice and tight. But even though it's nice, really nice material, you could still have a problem. And there's a couple of defects on this piece, so I flipped it over. There's a little gouge right here. I know this is a lower cabinet, and you're probably never going to see it. That's 80 and an 1/8. So I'm 1/16 out. So I want to be at 80 and 1/16 right there. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it right here in the corner. Check the sides. Pin that. Now, because of the extra wide rabbets, we have a lot of room for that nail. So I'm not worried about blowouts. But you still should try to get it in the middle. Okay, so that's the first one. And so we've got this on a flat so that it's not twisted. And this piece can sit in here nice, just like it would be at the job site on a leveled up surface. I don't have to worry about it twisting. Now, sometimes I put them together with a back up if there's really big cabinets. But in this particular case, I'm not, because I want all the fronts to be perfectly flush. It's hard to do when you're doing it upside down. All right, so now we've got these two humongous cabinets. They really don't seem that big, but they're monsters. So 8 feet by 3 feet wide, each of them. With this divider in here, this one's even heavier. But man, I'll tell you what, some serious weight here. I got these guys ready to go. However, they're reversed. So I need to put this one on the right side. I'm going to have them set here so that I can put the face frames on after they're all done. And they're going to attach in such a way that they're seamless, right? There's no seam going up and down the lengths of the cabinets. The last cabinet is the upper cabinet, but it's a big one. This guy right here, 70-inch wide cabinet. Of course, it's 15-inch deep, and it's got a center divider. And I'm going to hold the cabinet so I can't push it. See how I'm doing that? I'm actually pushing against the cabinet, but I'm also pulling with my arm so I can squeeze it together. And now I'm going to push this one towards the cabinet. So when you do that, everything's getting pushed in. So now it's nice and tight, and the inside of the cabinet's nice and tight. For good measure, go ahead and pin this guy from the top at an angle. Best way to do it is to alternate them. So nail one here, here, here. So you don't put two nails right next to each other since you're splitting that 3/4 inch piece. Next step is to figure out the face frames on all this stuff, and of course start cutting face frames. Pretty straightforward. We're going to go with a 2-inch middle, and we're going to go 2s left and right on the upper. On the lower, we're going to go 2 on the right, 4 on the left. 4 is actually going to be overhanging to the inside so that when we T-bone these, that's going to go right into it. Since we're going to leave that dead space, we're not going to touch it. And then we're going to put a cleat on the wall that's going to hold the counter. For the other cabinets, we're going with 2s on the top, and we're going, of course, 2s. Remember this one on the left with the dividers, that does not get a vertical style. The vertical style is going to be shared with this one on the right, so that's 2 1/4. So that's going to overhang this cabinet, and it's actually going to lock in. So when we install this job, we have to install this one first, and then, at least put it in place, and then this one will be put in place after. First thing I do, take a look at the boards, make sure the edges are decent. There are some nicks, but I'm going to work around them. But so this is oriented good side up. But I have noted a couple boards, this one in particular, that has a knot right there. And this will be okay as long as the piece is wide enough to get past that knot. But I do mark it. The ends, I check for snipe. And these boards are all actually really good. No snipe. But I also check the underside and make sure that they're good. And check for splitting on the ends. So if you don't see any checking, splitting, and there's no snipe, I can go pretty close to the end here to get a lot of yield out of these boards. This one here has got lots of things happening. There's actually some splits. You can see there, minor splitting, checking. And then also snipe is pretty good. So I went ahead and marked that one about 5 inches in from the end. This one has a split going up on the back side. You can't see it on this side at all, but if you flip it over, you can see it's right there. So my guess is it probably goes a little further than this. So I'm just sectioning out that part. Now, as far as straightness goes, you never know, right? As these things go and you start working with them, you never know what they're gonna do. So I like to take a little bit off of each side. It takes a little bit more work. If I have the material, I like to do that. It really helps the stability of the workpiece. So I can tell you for sure, if you do that, you're gonna end up with straighter boards. So the procedure is to rip them and joint them. Rip them and joint, rip them and joint. So this is the stack. You can see it's a lot easier to deal with this size than it is to deal with huge ones. So I'm going to take all these boards over there to the jointer and I will get a good clean edge. As you can see, this is the stuff you got to look for. That's on the back side. So if you looked at it here, you would think it's really good. But then, look at that. So that's the kind of stuff we need to get rid of. Just because these guys are already straight lined one edge, I can put it on the rip fence, use that edge, and straight line this other side. And then I can flip it over and take this off. So I'll measure this width right to the edge here so it's nice straight, the maximum, and then just flip it over. Got a good start on it. It's about 9:30. I think I'm about ready to call it a night. This is the upper cabinet, and it's going to be one divided in the middle. Pretty simple. I just want there to be a little lip on that bottom. That's great. Now I can use this piece as my spacer for this bottom. I just pull it nice and tight, lock it in, screw it, take this, go to the other side and do the exact same thing. This actually needs to be sanded also. I gotta do that. All the other face frames are completely done and installed on them. And I don't know if you remember, but this was this particular job. Again, the last job I did for the same, this is part 2. This particular job I install and then I secure this after I bring it to the job site. So this is completely installed, but once I unscrew these together from being together, there's a screw. See that right there? And there's a pocket screw right here. So once I take that pocket screw out and the cabinet screws, those three pockets, they will separate the cabinet. And then when I go to the job site, I will put this back together just like it is and then secure it. Then once it's done, the glue is done drying, I'll put glue on this joint here, all three, top, bottom, and middle. Once that's done, I'll sand this and it will look like this. So you won't really be able to tell how this cabinet got in there because it's the way that it's glued up and everything. It'll just like look like one big massive piece, which we all know that can't happen. I learned a long time ago that it's a pain in the butt to try to trim the laminate, the veneer strips. It's a waste of time to try to trim that with a razor blade and all that stuff. So I cut these oversized by about 1 inch, and then I put the strips on. I iron on the veneer edge banding, and then I can take it to the table saw again and trim both sides. I'm going to use pre-finished material for the edge banding. Maple, says it right there. Fleeced, pre-glued, UV coat, sanded. So this thing's got you can see it's got a little bit of a sheen to it. I need to take the edge banding and trim it down. As you can see, all the edge banding is rough size, right? So it's a little bigger than what I needed. So I need to flush trim this, and there's lots of different ways of doing this. You can either use a trimming tool like I've got over here, these ones, and these work great, but on a lot of shelves it's nice maybe to set up a router, because I've got, I don't know, 20 something shelves or whatever, and those can give you tear out pretty easily. So if you aren't careful and you go against the grain on this edge banding, you for sure will get tear out. So it's probably nice to do that if you are really careful and you're only doing a few shelves. But if you're doing a ton, this is definitely the way to go. Now, you can't just set this up like you would think, like, oh, it's a flush trim bit, so I'm going to set it, it'll cut. So what you have to do is raise up the fence, the router fence. As you can see, I've got that up about a strong 1/16 of an inch, and you can see this edge banding is very thin. It's not very thick at all, so that fits under there no problem. So I just basically create this little space for the edge banding to kind of slide in, as you can see. And now, as you can see, it goes right up tight against the fence. That's what you want. Now you want to come across here, and again, you need to have something that's going to push it up against the fence tightly, so you don't have to worry about it. And you can see it's compressed pretty good. Sometimes you can get a little melting of the glue because of the router bit, and sometimes you have to clean off the bearing if it is getting on the bearing. So we'll take it and we'll just see how it does. Obviously it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. Glue is activated by heat, and when you have a router spinning, it sometimes creates that heat and melts the glue, of course. I mean, that's a extremely good cut. And I'll tell you what, these pieces are cut oversized. So when I go to trim them, they'll be good. I mean, this cut is just, you can't get that with a laminate trimmer like these. You just can't do it. And you know what? This takes forever. Even though they're double-sided, you never want to use double-sided on wood, because the grain goes in opposite directions a lot of the time. So if you're using double-sided and you go to cut this stuff, what's going to happen is if you put this thing on here and you go here, right, and you're going to pull to cut it, right, there's an arrow here, obviously you can see. That arrow means that's the cut direction. So you can you can go this way, or you can spin it around. These are double-sided, and you can go this way. So what I usually do, unless it's white melamine veneer tape, which I don't ever use, it's always wood. I take these off, I separate them, and that way you can do, not doing both sides, because if I don't want to do both sides, maybe I just want one side done, because the grain is going a certain direction and it's opposite down below. So if I want to, let's say the grain is going, see that? It's going this way. Oops, and now it changes. So right there you'd get tear out. And it's coming up. And it's coming up. Oop, tear out there because it changes direction right there. Now we're going against the grain. So right there it completely changes. So we'd be getting tear out all along there. So in order to combat that, you got to come in here, do a little bit of a cut like that, right? And then once you're done with that, take the tool, spin it around, and now go with the grain here. So yeah, that's definitely a pain to do. I definitely wouldn't recommend that. And then once you're done, you got to chamfer the edge, right? Take a little bit of sandpaper or a block and just kind of knock that sharp edge off. That's pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these guys to length since I've got some time. So anyways, 80 tooth, and raise it up. Of course, I'm going to use my crosscut sled, which is right there. So if you go to get material and you want to know what, in my opinion, what the best stuff is, it's called whole piece face. There's no seams on the good side, and a lot of times there's no seams on the back side. So this particular one, yeah, there's no seams. However, I think there's a couple scratches, but that's pretty much it. This thing is really clean. So this is both sides. And again, I don't have a scoring blade. This is without a scoring blade. And this is the result. I mean, it's very good. Right there. Gone. So now if you try to do this with an eraser or wipe it with anything, you're going to be here forever. It just doesn't clean very well. But I have these marks everywhere on these cabinet parts. I mean, you name it, there's marks there. The marks for the lengths, marks for the holes, marks for the sides that I'm cutting on. I put marks for the dados and grooves and rabbets and everything. So when you go to put the job in, I want it to be nice and clean. So you got to go around and clean it all. So anyways, isopropyl alcohol, that's my go-to. Okay, I'm going to assemble this door, and the first thing I do is put glue in the grooves, and I put it up against that back edge, and it drops down. One of the advantages of using this material is that I can put glue in the panels. Now, of course, we're not using solid wood panels, so that's why. If we were using solid wood panels, we wouldn't be using MDF. You don't use solid wood with MDF rails and stiles. Okay, then I just drop this down into the groove. Then I take this one, quickly put it up. So now both of those are on. Both of the rails are on. And I can take my glue and put it on the tenons. Now, most of the time you're going to get glue squeeze out. That's just going to be pretty much the norm. So I'm not concerned about it. Take this, start here, and if you get it flush at the end here, that's good. Tap this one flush. That's helpful if it's already flush or close to it. That's it. Now as you go across here, you're going to get glue on your hands. Always have a rag ready. And wipe off the joint. Do it over. Take it. Repeat the process. So now with it's clamped together, it doesn't take much pressure at all. Get the glue that's going to squeeze out on the bottom. And if you have glue squeezing out in the profile, it's just a little bit of glue. Just take a screw like that. I like to use screws if possible. Okay, now that's good. Flip it over, get the bottom. The door is done. You can check it for square, but pretty much the doors are going to be square. But you can always just check it just to see. That's exactly 45 1/4, so perfectly square. You can see here, these joints are nice and tight. And this didn't take much clamp pressure at all. Now, this is not the right material for a kitchen. I mean, you could probably use it and it would probably be reasonably okay. But just in case, I don't use it for any wet areas. I only use it for dry areas. And it's a very good door for that. That's it. Now, once these guys dry for a while, I can take them out of the clamps maybe in a couple of hours. These guys too. While I'm waiting for that, I can do a couple more things. I can start sanding these. And I can also start putting the hinges on. Okay, I just finished sanding this face frame. I want to make a note that in order to use this thing, keep it clean. And this is great for going in here and getting both sides of the joint. So you just take it, do that. Works really well. Okay, so that's good. It's all done. That's nice, eased edge, both sides. That's really good. Very nice. Sometimes you can't even see the joint. Notice how tight the panel is. So I like to use the 5-inch sander this one in particular, because it's so light and it's so easy to handle. It's way better than the 6-inch one. The way the handle is. This is really nice for big areas, but for this, it can be a little overkill. And certainly for the sides, this is less fatiguing. Do you remember how I was telling you that I had lubed up my clamps and everything? Well, that's residue from the glue, or from the clamps. Thank goodness this is a water-based paint. As you're setting up the router bit set, you want to make sure that the height of the router bit set is going to leave you with this result. So that takes some trial and error, but once you understand what you're trying to do, you'll really appreciate that this is lower or flush rather than raised up. So just trust me on that. When it's raised up and you go to sand it, you're going to knock off the edges and it's going to chip it, and it's not good at all. So don't even try it. So just as I did in the last job where we had those really big doors, I'm putting on this panel here. It's just 3/4 inch MDF, regular MDF, heavy. So it's actually bowed this way. So when I put it on here, it kind of flattens out and it kind of remains pretty flat. In fact, it doesn't even deflect right there, hardly at all. So that's cool. It takes away a little bit of the suction because the hole becomes smaller, especially when you put the door up there. The door shuts off some of the suction. So if you look at it, you can see it's only getting like that much suction. It's hard. If it's, dying like for air, just turn down the volume a little bit, because turn down the velocity. That's funny, volume. But otherwise, it worked fine last time. It's just one of those things you got to deal with. It definitely has a smaller hole. And the only thing I want to make sure of is that I'm not going to go through the workpiece as I set this up. As soon as I hit auto, the light will go on the drill press. All right, spot. So we just don't want to go through with that center spur. Now, because this door is so long and there isn't a mid rail, I need to figure out exactly where it goes. So 63 3/4 is the length of it. So if it was 64, that would be 32. So let me take that 32 and subtract an 8. So that's 31 7/8. Let me just see if that is right. 31 7/8. Perfect, so that's the center. So I'll tell you something, I like to wear gloves because you can really grip this stuff, and it's just so much simpler to do work. The only thing is you can't do certain things with it, but it's really nice. They're really nice to have. Okay, so I've got this in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and drill it. Wow, okay, that was really cool. Just barely had enough room. Okay, I'm just making sure these guys went deep enough. Okay, they are. So I just start with doing these guys, 3 at a time or whatever, and just put the hinge on there and knock them out. That's it. That's how they go. All right, that's the easy part. And this is 1.5 inches up. So I'm going to put that down, and I can put my plate right on it. Set it down. Now for the screws, I'm going to use 3/4 inch. And if you go a little bit towards the inside of the cabinet with the screw, it will pull it in a little bit. when you drive the screw, rather than push the hinge plate out. Okay, so this will go on just like this, clip into place. The other one, while it's already attached to the hinge, the plate, I can go ahead and secure that with the screw. You can pre-drill. It's not necessary with this wood, but you definitely can. If you did pre-drill, it does make it a little easier to actually find the hole. So we'll get all these on and then we'll adjust them for final fit. I've got this set up here. I just temporarily put the doors on and fitted them, got them all to my line. So I just go around the perimeter and I mark out the 1/2 inch overlay all the way around. And even if I don't get to the 1/2 inch, that's my reference line. So I know if the doors are parallel and square with the opening. Even if I don't go there, it's just my reference line. So I'm going to take these off, and I'm actually going to take them off right here for my painters and then take them to the job site. So that's it.